I used to think that life was all about holding on to love, to promises, to the image of what I thought we were. But sometimes, it's the letting go that sets you free. 15 years of marriage, and I had never seen it coming. Rachel, the woman I built my life around, had been planning her escape for over a year, using our shared assets to fund a future with someone else. When the truth hit, it didn't feel like betrayal, it felt like a wake-up call. The bank called in the loans, and the fraud investigation began. But instead of revenge, instead of clinging to anger, I chose to walk away. I packed up, moved into a small house, and started over. I thought I would feel angry, defeated, but instead, I felt something unexpected: freedom. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was making decisions for me. It was time to leave behind the world I thought I knew and step into one where I got to define the next chapter. Would I regret it? Maybe. But I wasn't going to let fear hold me back any longer. I just want to take a moment to sincerely thank you for being here, for reading and engaging with this story. It means more than you know to have your attention, your time, and your thoughts. Stories like mine, and like yours, are what connect us all, no matter where we come from or where we're headed. Now, as we dive deeper into this journey, I'd love to hear from you. What's your take on this? Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads where the path you thought you were on no longer felt right? What did you do next? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's start a conversation. There's a lot more ahead, and I'm excited to continue uncovering the layers of this story together. So, let's dig in. Your thoughts, your experiences, those are the things that keep this story alive. Thank you again for being part of this. Let's get started. I'm not going back. I've found someone better, and I've already moved your things into storage. My name is Thomas Harper, 47 years old, sitting alone at the kitchen table of our Nashville apartment at 10:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night. My wife, Rachel, had been on a week-long business trip to San Diego. The text came through, attached with a screenshot showing the transfer of $150,000 from our joint account to her personal one. I placed my phone down and took a deep breath. 17 years of marriage, shattered by 2 simple sentences and a bank transfer. The signs had been there for months: long weekends that turned into full weeks, new clothes she never wore at home, phone calls that were always cut short when I walked into the room. I knew something was off. I'm an investigator. Recognizing red flags is second nature. But I stayed quiet. Maybe that was my first mistake. Or maybe it was marrying someone who dismissed my work as a tedious profession, nothing more than research in case files. I opened my laptop and checked the email account Rachel didn't know I had. 3 security notifications from my bank: someone had tried to change passwords on accounts she'd never seen. She was meticulous. I had to give her credit. I picked up my phone and typed 2 words in response. Good luck. Then I dialed my brother, Ben. Remember that backup plan we talked about 5 years ago? I said when he answered. It's time, he asked. Yes, I replied. She just made her move. I hung up and looked at the framed picture on the wall. It was the only one left where Rachel and I still appeared together, smiling. I should have noticed that sooner. I met Rachel at a high school reunion. I was 35, newly separated from my first marriage, and trying to find my footing again. She was 32, confident, outgoing, and uninterested in the details of my work. I don't care about the details, as long as you make enough money, she'd always say when I tried to explain. We married a year after that reunion. I supported her dream of opening a photography studio, funding it entirely from my savings. When she wanted a bigger house, I agreed. When she wanted luxury vacations and fancy jewelry, I signed the checks without hesitation. My dad warned me once while we were fixing the fence in the backyard. You know, son, Rachel spends a lot of your money, he said. I ignored it, chalking it up to him being old-fashioned. Maybe I should have listened. Just make sure she values what you do to earn it. My father's words stuck with me long after I brushed him off. 6 years into my marriage to Rachel, I started quietly restructuring my assets. Nothing illegal, just protective. I set up a couple of limited liability companies, created a trust, dabbled in cryptocurrency, and set up offshore accounts for international clients. Rachel knew about our joint checking and savings, but nothing beyond that. As the months went by, I watched Rachel get deeper into the fitness influencer world. Her Instagram following grew into the thousands, and she began traveling with her wellness community. First, it was just weekends, but then it turned into whole weeks away. "You wouldn't enjoy it," she'd tell me. "It's all yoga talk and juice cleanses." Last Christmas, she forgot my birthday. When I mentioned it the next day, she bought me an expensive watch and said, "I've just been so busy with the studio expansion." I accepted the watch, but that night, I finalized the paperwork for my contingency plan. The signs were there. I just didn't want to see the full picture. The morning after Rachel's text, I woke up early and made coffee, same as always. Habits are hard to break, even when your world feels like it's crumbling. I logged into my primary financial management system, custom built for my practice but now adapted for personal use. With a few keystrokes, I activated the contingency protocol Ben and I had created years ago. First, I froze all joint accounts and credit cards. Then I triggered a fraud alert on the $150,000 transfer, using my banking contacts to speed things up. I sent proof of the financial misconduct to my attorney, along with instructions to file for divorce immediately. Then I called my mom. "Rachel's left me," I said simply. "She took the money and moved my things out while she was supposed to be on vacation." My mom was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry, Thomas," she finally said. "But I can't say I'm surprised." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "What I've been preparing to do for years," I replied. "Protect what's mine." An hour later, my phone lit up with Rachel's name. I declined the call. 10 more calls followed, then a text. "What the hell did you do? The money's gone and my cards don't work." I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the storage facility listed in her text. Using the code she'd sent me, I retrieved 2 boxes of my clothes and my laptop. The rest of my belongings, family photos, books, mementos from my father, were nowhere to be found. That's when something in me hardened. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about 15 years discarded without a second thought. It was about someone believing they could erase me from my own life. I stopped at a coffee shop and opened my laptop. Using financial databases only available to licensed investigators, I pulled up everything I could find on Kyle Spencer, the fitness influencer Rachel had been tagging in her photos for months. The someone better she had mentioned. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Kyle's gym business was on the verge of collapse. 3 maxed-out business credit cards, a lease he couldn't afford, and Rachel had co-signed on a car loan with him 2 months ago. I closed my laptop and drove to a hotel. For the first time in years, I felt completely clear about what needed to be done. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Monday morning, I walked into my office like nothing had happened. My assistant, Michelle, looked up, surprised. "Ben, I thought you'd be taking some time off," she said. "Rachel called here 3 times already," she added. "Did she?" I replied, not asking, just acknowledging. "Tell her if she calls again, she can contact my attorney." By noon, Rachel had escalated from calls to showing up in person. The receptionist buzzed my office. "Your wife is here," she said. "She's quite insistent," she added. I sighed and walked to the lobby. Rachel was standing there, wearing oversized sunglasses perched on top of her head and her yoga clothes perfectly coordinated. She smiled when she saw me, the same smile she'd used for 16 years whenever she wanted something. "Ben, there's been a huge misunderstanding with the bank," she said loudly for everyone to hear. "All our accounts are frozen." "It's not a misunderstanding," I said quietly. "You transferred money without authorization. The bank flagged it as fraud." Her smile faltered. "It was our joint account. I'm your wife." You're my soon-to-be ex-wife who emptied our savings while informing me that you moved out and found someone new. That's textbook financial misconduct. Her voice dropped to a hiss. You can't do this to me. I've already put deposits down on a new place. I've made commitments. To Kyle Spencer? I asked. Yes, I know all about those commitments. Her face went white. You're investigating me? No, I said, just protecting myself from fraud. I'll fight this, she snapped. I deserve half of everything. I looked at her evenly. Half of what's in those accounts, sure, but you seem to be under the impression that's all there is. I glanced at Rachel, who blinked, confused. What are you talking about? She asked. You'll find out in discovery, I said, then turned and walked back to my office. That afternoon, I received an email from Rachel's newly hired attorney, demanding immediate access to all financial records and threatening to expose irregularities in my accounting practice if I didn't comply. It was an amateur move, a threat with no substance behind it. I forwarded it to my attorney with one line, proceed as planned. By evening, Rachel had rallied mutual friends to her side. My phone filled with messages asking why I was being vindictive and controlling. No one questioned where she'd been the past week or who she'd been with. No one asked about the money she'd taken. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I went to the gym, not Rachel's studio or Kyle's flashy fitness center, but the small community center where I'd been working out for years. I lifted weights until my arms shook, then drove back to my hotel room. The trap was closing, but not around me. 3 days later, my attorney called. We found something interesting, she said. Rachel's been siphoning money from your joint account for over a year. Small transfers at first, then larger ones. To where? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Multiple accounts, some to her personal savings, but most to a business LLC registered to Kyle Spencer. Almost $80,000 total. And she used our joint funds as the source. Which means we can add financial infidelity to the divorce filing, she added. I thanked her and hung up. I wasn't surprised, but confirmation still felt like a punch to the gut. Rachel hadn't just left me for someone else. She'd been planning it for over a year, funding her exit and her new boyfriend's business with my money. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. You need to back off. Rachel deserves better than you. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. Kyle Spencer, getting involved directly. Interesting. I drove to my brother's house the next morning. Jason worked in digital security, the perfect complement to my financial expertise. We'd collaborated on cases before, but this was different. I need everything you can find on Spencer Fitness LLC, I told him. Bank records, loans, credit applications, everything. Jason raised an eyebrow. Legal channels only, right? Of course. We're just connecting public dots faster than most people could. 3 hours later, we had our answer. Kyle Spencer wasn't just in debt, he was underwater. His social media portrayed success, but his business was failing. The new equipment, the expansion, the promotional events, everything was funded through risky loans and, more recently, Rachel's investments. But there was something else, something Rachel couldn't have known. Look at this, Jason said, pointing to his screen. Spencer applied for a small business loan 4 months ago, used the gym equipment as collateral. That's normal, I said. Yeah, but look who co-signed. I leaned forward. The document showed Rachel's signature on a $175,000 equipment loan. She co-signed before she left you, Jason said quietly. But here's the kicker, he added. The loan specifies joint responsibility with her spouse. They used your marital status to secure better terms. I stared at the screen. Rachel had put my assets on the line for his loan without my knowledge. Exactly, Jason said. And there's more. He scrolled down. 3 credit cards, a car lease, and the new commercial space rental, all co-signed by Rachel, all leveraging your marital assets as security. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, kids were playing in the yard next door, unaware of the adult complications unfolding just a few feet away. She has no idea what she's done, I said finally. And neither does he. The next morning, I met with my attorney and laid out everything we'd found. I want to move quickly, I told her, before they realize what's happening. She reviewed the documents and nodded. We'll file for emergency asset protection today. The loan fraud alone is enough to freeze everything until the divorce is settled. That afternoon, I drove to Spencer Fitness. The gym was sleek and modern, with motivational quotes painted on the walls and Kyle's face plastered across the entrance. Inside, young adults in expensive workout gear took selfies between half-hearted sets. Kyle spotted me immediately. He was taller in person, with the artificial tan and capped teeth of someone who built their career on appearance. He walked over, hand extended, smile perfectly calibrated. "You must be Ben," he said. "Rachel's mentioned you." "I'm sure she has," I replied, not taking his hand. "We need to talk. Privately." His smile faltered, but he led me to his office, glass-walled, visible to everyone, but soundproof. "What can I do for you?" he asked, closing the door. I placed a folder on his desk. "This is every financial document connecting you to Rachel. Loans, credit cards, leases, all co-signed using our marital assets as security." He picked up the folder cautiously. "I don't understand." "It's simple," I said. "Rachel used our marriage to back your business loans. Now we're divorcing, and those guarantees are invalid." The color drained from his face as he flipped through the pages. "These are all legitimate business arrangements between Rachel and me," Kyle said, his voice shaking slightly. "Maybe, but the banks approved them based on our combined assets and income, assets she no longer has access to." He closed the folder. "What do you want?" "Nothing from you," I replied. "I just thought you should know what's coming. The banks will be calling those loans due very soon." "Kyle, you said Rachel was wealthy," I added, voice steady. "That money's not an issue for me." "Money's never been the issue," I replied. "Trust was." I stood up to leave but paused at the door. "One more thing. When Rachel moved out, she took some items of sentimental value to me. Family photos, my father's watch, things money can't replace." Kyle stared at me for a long moment, the tension in the room palpable. "I'll see what I can do," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded and left. The next day, a courier delivered a box to my hotel. Inside were the missing photos, my father's watch, and other personal items, no note included. That same afternoon, my attorney confirmed the emergency asset protection had been granted. All shared assets would remain frozen until the divorce was finalized. I logged into my financial management system and reviewed the alerts. Rachel had attempted to access our frozen account 17 times in the past 24 hours. She'd also tried to open a new credit line using our home as collateral. Denied. My phone lit up with her name again. This time, I answered. "What have you done?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "The bank called in Kyle's loans, all of them. They're seizing the equipment tomorrow," I said calmly. "This is vindictive, Ben. You're destroying him to get back at me." "I'm not doing anything to him," I said. "I'm simply protecting myself from fraud. You used our marriage to secure his loans without my knowledge or consent. That's illegal." "We can work this out," she said, her tone softening suddenly. "Come home. We'll talk." 15 years of marriage, and she still thought I could be manipulated that easily. "There's nothing to work out," I replied. "The divorce will proceed. The fraud investigation will continue, and Kyle will learn an expensive lesson about due diligence." I ended the call and blocked her number. That night, I slept better than I had in months. 3 weeks later, I sat in a conference room as Rachel and her attorney arrived for our court-ordered mediation. She looked tired, the designer outfit and perfect makeup unable to hide the strain. Her attorney spoke first. "My client is willing to be reasonable about the division of assets," despite the aggressive tactics employed thus far. My attorney smiled politely. That's good to hear, because there's been a development. She slid a document across the table. The bank has completed its fraud investigation. They've determined that Rachel forged Ben's signature on multiple loan documents, using their marital assets as collateral without his knowledge. Rachel's attorney skimmed the document, his face paling. We'll need time to review this, he said. Of course, my attorney replied. But you should know that the bank has already referred the matter to the district attorney. This meeting is a courtesy before criminal charges are filed. Rachel stared at me, eyes wide. Criminal charges? Ben, you can't be serious. I met her gaze steadily. I didn't file the charges. The bank did. That's what happens when you commit loan fraud. Her attorney whispered something in her ear. She shook her head vehemently. If Ms. Harper is willing to sign our proposed settlement agreement today, my attorney continued, Ben is prepared to provide a statement to the bank that could mitigate the criminal implications. He won't press charges for the theft of personal property or the unauthorized transfer from the joint account. I watched as Rachel's carefully constructed world collapsed. She'd expected anger, jealousy, perhaps even begging. She hadn't expected consequences. The settlement is generous, I said quietly. You keep your yoga studio, which was always profitable. You keep your car and personal belongings. You receive no alimony and you assume responsibility for the debts you incurred in my name. And Kyle, she asked, her voice barely audible. Mr. Spencer's financial issues are his own problem, my attorney replied. But without your husband's assets backing those loans, I understand the bank has already begun repossession proceedings. Rachel signed the papers without further argument. As we left the conference room, she caught my arm. I never thought you'd fight back like this, she said. You always just went along with everything. That was my choice, I replied, just like this is your choice. I walked away without looking back. A month later, I moved out of the hotel and into a small house near downtown Des Moines. Nothing fancy, just a small craftsman with good bones that needed some work. The kind of project that would keep my hands busy and my mind occupied during the evenings. I heard through mutual friends that Rachel had moved to Montana to start over. Her Instagram showed mountain views and inspirational quotes about new beginnings. Kyle's gym had been sold to a national chain, and he'd relocated to Los Angeles to expand his brand. Neither of them mentioned what had happened. People rarely advertise their failures. My brother Jason stopped by one Saturday to help me install new cabinets in the kitchen. Heard anything from Rachel? He asked as we measured for the hinges. No, I said, and I don't expect to. You know, you could have taken her for everything, Jason added. The fraud charges alone would have ensured that. I shrugged. What would be the point? She's no longer my problem. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of measuring, cutting, and mounting creating a meditative state. I'm thinking of taking some time off, I said eventually. Maybe drive up to Minnesota, do some fishing at the cabin. Dad would like that, Jason replied. You haven't been there since he passed. That evening, after Jason left, I sat on my back porch with a glass of bourbon. The neighborhood was quiet, with only the occasional dog bark or child's laugh breaking the silence. Different from the upscale community Rachel had insisted on, more real somehow. I thought about the last 15 years, how I'd allowed someone else to define my life, my worth, how I'd noticed the signs but chose to ignore them, how when the moment came, I had prepared because some part of me had always known this day would arrive. I didn't feel victorious, I didn't feel vindicated, I just felt free. The next morning, I called my office and told them I'd be taking 2 weeks off. Then I packed my truck, locked up the house, and headed north. No itinerary, no expectations. Just the open road. And for the first time in years, no invisible ledger of resentments to balance. Hey there, I know some of you might be reading this and thinking, what would I do in his shoes? Trust me, I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. It's not easy walking away from what you thought was your life, your future, your everything. But sometimes, we have to step away to rediscover who we are beneath the weight of other people's expectations. If you're in a place where you feel stuck, like you're constantly trying to meet someone else's needs or following a path that doesn't feel right, I get it. It's hard. But here's what I've learned: the moment we stop waiting for permission to take control of our own story, the moment we start walking our own path, is the moment we start to reclaim our power. You don't have to have it all figured out, and you don't have to know what comes next. Life doesn't need a perfect plan. All you need to do is take the first step. That's how I ended up here, by choosing not to let the weight of resentment or fear define me anymore. I decided to be the person who stops looking over their shoulder and starts looking forward. So, I challenge you to think about the things that are holding you back. What's your Rachel or Kyle? What's stopping you from stepping into your own version of freedom, however it looks for you? Let me know in the comments. If you've been where I've been, if you've felt that weight of betrayal or loss, share your story too. It's time we stop pretending everything is fine when it's not. Sometimes, the best advice is this: let go of what's not serving you, and trust that you're strong enough to walk away and rebuild. Support each other. We're all in this together.